You and your friends are dead. On today's episode of Playing with Fear. Welcome to JoBlo Horror Videos Playing with Fear, where we take a look at some of the landmark horror titles throughout the history of gaming. Today's pick is a bit of a controversial one for a couple reasons. Friday the 13th for the NES is an often hated entry into the 8-bit horror landscape. Part of this perception is that it was published by the Rainbow of Death, LJN. And part of it is that Friday is a difficult and surprisingly complex game that was not explained very well and doesn't have the best learning curve while you are playing it. Friday the 13th is an oft-forgotten, Emmy-nominated TV series that aired from 1987 to 1990 and follows the owners of an antique shop as they hunt down cursed artifacts. The video game, however, you play as one of 6 camp counselors. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes way more sense. Friday the 13th is, of course, the legendary slasher series that began in 1980 with 9 solo entries, a remake, and a matchup that had horror fans drooling all over the world. The franchise would also bleed into toys, comics, an interesting TV show, novels, and of course, video games. Much like our previous entry Alien and its slasher contemporaries Halloween and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th got its digital start on the microcomputers with 1986's Friday the 13th, the computer game. Unlike those two slasher series with their Atari games that went after the plots of the very first films of the franchise, Friday went all in on a more advanced Jason. To be fair, this was due to the abilities of game programmers by 1986, as well as the amount of Friday films they had available to take from. Also, to be fair, saying advanced is being kind. There isn't much to the gameplay. You play as one of 5 camp counselors protecting the others from imminent Jason death. There are only 5 levels, and they all look a little samey being within the same campground. Still, the graphics were nice and detailed for the time, and Jason will even disguise himself as he goes around murdering, which is as frustrating as it is an interesting game mechanic. Enter LJN, the rainbow seal of death for 8 and 16-bit video games. Or at least that's what's become ingrained in our brains. LJN published many, many bad games, but they weren't the developers of those bad games. Friday the 13th for the NES, in fact, was developed by Atlas, and actually isn't that bad. Okay, well, it's not terrible. If Atlas sounds familiar, that's because they went on to become the creator of the insanely long and wildly popular Shin Megami Tensei series, as well as the equally critically acclaimed Persona series of games. Now, I doubt the same ragtag group of people worked on Friday the 13th, only the company's third game were the ones who went on to be involved in those games, but the studio is no slouch. By 1989, the Friday the 13th series had produced 8 films with a load of characters and Jason styles to choose from. Also by 1989, the NES had seen its fair share of licensed products, although few from the realm of horror. LJN began to snatch up rights to many movie licenses and wanted to push out as many as possible with the idea that consumers would see a movie or show they liked and rush to purchase the video game equivalent. Oh, how we were lied to. Friday the 13th was only their 3rd title, but neither Jaws nor The Karate Kid inspired much confidence in their ability to turn things around. Even well after Friday the 13th, the trail of bad game sadness continued with Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, X-Men, the list goes on. They didn't even limit themselves to the NES, with ventures on both the Game Boy and Super Nintendo to follow for the better part of a decade. If I seem to be picking on LJN, it's because they make it so easy. In all honesty though, they had some honest-to-God gems in their collection, and even today's game is much more than just the joke it has become. The other reason is there really isn't much online about the actual development of the game, with only composer Hirohiko Takayama getting a credit. He does a good job here on both music and sound effects. And he had a short but productive video game career with games like Ghostbusters 2 on the Game Boy and Adventure Island 3 on the NES. It's your typical summer at good old reliable Camp Crystal Lake. The sun is shining, the kids are enjoying their camp games, the existential dread of an invincible zombie killing machine that could be around every corner creep into the back of your mind. You and your other 5 camp counselor buddies are tasked with not only keeping at least one of these damn kids alive, but making sure at least one of you survives the gauntlet of zombies, wolves, crows, an angry, ethereal, decapitated mommy head, and one lightning-quick, pissed-off mama's boy. Merely surviving is not an option, as Jason will win this game of attrition, as he can come back to life while you and your friends, not to mention your young wards, have only one life to live. You need to take the fight to Jason and his mom to end their terror. And that's it. Really, that isn't much thinner than any of the films that the game draws inspiration from, minus the gore and nudity, of course. Most of the film's stories are teens getting drunk, high, and fornicating, followed by their ever more interesting and grim demise. Rinse and repeat. This brevity is also pretty standard for the time, besides video game RPGs that built the entire reputations over long story elements. Most games had a basic story and easy to understand mechanics to make them more accessible. Well, 1 out of 2 ain't bad. The story being thin definitely works in the game's favor though, as game mechanics are complicated enough, something that will be made quite clear in the next section. Alright, the other thing besides the shock of this game actually existing on the Nintendo in the late 80s that make Friday the 13th stand out is its gameplay, both good and bad. So when you hit start, you get to pick one of the 6 camp counselors, which, if I'm being honest, look like perfect 80s victims and even share some of the names of characters throughout the films of the franchise. Once you select your character, you start in whatever cabin that character you choose inhabits. From there you will have one of 3 views. The traveling view shows your character walking on the trail of cabins outside. The second view is the map, and the third is your player inside of a cabin. Sadly, this is where some of the difficulty and confusion begins. It is exceedingly difficult to tell where the hell you are going in your first playthrough. You can't even tell what direction you're going unless you walk for a bit, stop, check the map, and then walk again to see which direction you're headed. Now, I had this game growing up. We may have had it new, but I don't remember, and we certainly didn't have the instruction manual anymore. Without that, there is virtually no way to tell what you were supposed to do. There are zombies everywhere, bats, wolves, and crows will come at you as fast as any of the Ninja Gaiden games, and without warning, you could get attacked by Jason. Walking on the trail or in the forest, boom, Jason attack. Putzing around in one of the cabins, boom, Jason attack. In a boat trying to get to one of the cabins in the lake, boom, shark Jason attack. What you are supposed to do is use the counselors to fight your way through the zombies and defeat Jason 3 times. The game designates each of these as days, so each time you defeat him, you'll get what I'll charitably call a cutscene. The best way to do this is to find upgrades to your weapon. Every character starts with literal rocks to throw at the enemies. As expected, these rocks don't do much against anyone, especially Jason. The manual alludes to what you need to do, but after killing a set number of zombies, you can find a throwing knife. From there, you upgrade to the machete by doing the same thing, only a lot more of it. While you only need to kill 5 zombies with rocks to get the knife, not a sentence I thought I'd ever have to say, to get the machete, you have to kill a whopping 60 zombies, all with the same character, and do it over and over again to upgrade each one. Other weapons you can get are the axe, the torch, and the pitchfork. The axe and the torch can be found in locked cabins or by lighting all the fireplaces inside of them respectively. The pitchfork, which is also the most powerful weapon in the game, can only be found by defeating the floating head of Jason's mom on day 3. A completely optional fight, and one that you can do on each of the 3 days that also nets you some pretty awesome items, is wandering into the cave and fighting Pamela Voorhees, or at least what's left of her. She is the only other boss character, but unlike her son, killing her doesn't end the day and is not required to complete the game. In addition to weapons, the characters can find items strewn throughout the camp world. These are lighters that are needed to light fireplaces inside the cabins, notes that will give you hints on what to do and where to go, keys which are used to unlock doors in the cabins that are hidden within the forest or the caves, and vitamins which will give you back some health or act as an emergency Hail Mary if all of your life runs out. There are also 2 special items, the flashlight, which you can obtain by lighting every fireplace in the large cabins, and the disgusting sweater worn by Mrs. Voorhees, which acts as armor of all things. Now, show of hands, how many people watching this video knew this game had this many aspects to it?
Come on, raise your hands. Let's see them.
Just as each weapon has different power levels, each counselor is different in ways that go beyond just cosmetic. Each player character has different metrics in running speed, jumping height, throwing ability, and rowing ability. Each counselor is dependent on the player upgrading their weapons and finding items, so you probably will want to make sure everyone has more than just rocks to fight Jason with, although I'd love to see that in one of the movies. If all the counselors die, then that's it. If Jason gets to the children and kills them all, that's it. You are treated to one of the most definitive and soul-crushing endings of all time. A black screen with the words, "You and your friends are dead. Game over." So kill Jason 3 times. That can't be that hard, right? Right? Well, unfortunately, you were in the hole early on this one. All of those strategies and ways to find new weapons and what to do, none of that is explained unless you have the manual, and even then, a lot of it's left out. You will have no idea where to go, how to upgrade weapons, or that going after Mom will help you immeasurably. On top of that, the controls are laggy, your first weapon is underpowered and can only be thrown in an arc, and each time you fight Jason he gets faster and is harder to kill. He also doesn't stand by idly waiting for you. He brings the fight to you more often than not, or will lure you to him by going after a peer, or worse, the kids. Just like last episode, we have to look at what this game is versus what this game was. This 8-bit game is not scary now, but in 1989, to the audience it was sold to, that certainly got the job done. The cover shows Jason wielding an axe from Friday the 13th Part 7, and is just bizarre. Not only did Nintendo okay a video game based on a severely R-rated film series, but they greenlit the cover having a picture from one of those very films. It can also be scary to face Jason, particularly in the side-scrolling sections, as he can come out of nowhere, and you get hit with a stinger of music or a complete stoppage of screen movement. Where the scares really take center stage, though, are in the presentation. The music on the main trails is fine, but becomes haunting and just plain fear-inducing when you enter the cabins. It almost creates a sense that someone is watching you, stalking you, and then when you do finally run into Jason, the music becomes high-tempo and tries something completely different. The actual fighting is much more akin to Punch-Out, but the attempt is sincere. When Jason decides to go after another camp counselor or the children, it becomes a drop-what-you're-doing race to stop him. While this might feel like an annoying game mechanic, it is quite good at building tension. When you get to them and they thank you for saving their lives, you turn each corner of the house, the screen changes. You know he's there waiting for you. It's good stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of this game's creative ideas and game mechanics are buried by poor execution and a terrible reputation. Friday the 13th is almost never remembered fondly, and in fact is far more popular for being made fun of than for being an early example of horror on the NES. A positive shine to its legacy is that it laid the groundwork for another LJN-published misunderstood horror title in 1990's A Nightmare on Elm Street. And the 8-bit version of Jason here has become sort of a fan favorite. It received the physical action figure treatment from NECA in 2015 and became an unlockable skin in the much truer to the film franchise game Friday the 13th, released by Gun Media in 2017. Since his appearance here, Jason has only appeared in 2 future releases. As a DLC character in Mortal Kombat X, and lovingly preserved in the 2017 release that came out for all major systems of the time. The main reason for this is almost certainly due to the legal battles that not only ended the most recent game's updates early, but also made it almost impossible to get all the films together in one collection before Scream Factory worked their magic this past year. If you have a chance, play the most recent game, as it gives you the best possible experience to play as Jason that we will ever have. If you want to check out the 89 original, then I strongly suggest you seek out a guide or even play one of the many fan mods that are designed to make the game a little easier. Were you able to beat this game when it came out? What did you think of this and the 2017 release? Let us know in the comments, as well as what other games you'd like to see from this show. Thank you for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our JoBlo Horror Videos channel. Tell your friends who like this sort of content and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all our latest videos. We're an independent company and we appreciate all your support.